Since the dawn of humanity, we have been looking up at the stars and wondering what is out there. We as humans are drawn to things that we do not understand. From the ocean to the new world, to the realm of things so small we literally can't see them, we are driven to go and explore the unknown. This drive has pushed us to do some incredible and not so incredible things alike. In our modern day, we tend to see ourselves as invincible. Humanity has overcome countless hurdles to get where we are today. We have created technology that can connect people around the globe basically instantly, invented new methods for farming, formed governments and societies where we can live and work. But there is still one frontier we have yet to conquer in our day. Space, as I'm sure you are aware, is huge. In fact, space is so large that to describe it as huge just doesn't really cover it. Our universe as we know it is so massive that I am not even going to try to bring it into perspective. We as humans simply cannot comprehend the size of space. It is so beyond our sense of scale that trying to describe its size is pretty much meaningless. I'm guessing that you read the title of this video, so you know what I'm here to argue. This is my first reason why I think that it is unlikely that we will ever meet aliens. I also want to say at the start of this video that I am not an astrophysicist, so everything I say can and should be taken with a grain of salt. I also want to let everyone know now that I will not be going into technical details about these, and if you want to learn more about any of the things I mention here, I will link videos that explain them more. As another point to note, before I get started, I want to point out that when I say meet, I mean a human from Earth and an alien from another planet actually physically meet. This will make sense later, but for now, enjoy the video. Number 1. Space is just too large for humans to comprehend. Trying to bring the scale of the universe into any kind of perspective we as humans have is totally useless. However, our current 93 billion light-year estimate of the diameter of the observable universe is not the full picture. There are a couple of things to mention in this section that will take a little bit of explaining. The first is that the universe is expanding. We have all grown up learning in school that nothing can travel faster than light, and this is technically true. When it comes to physically traversing a distance in a vacuum, light speed is the universal speed limit. So why does this matter? Well, the universe is expanding, and confusingly, it is expanding faster than light travels. This may at first seem counterintuitive because nothing can travel faster than light, but the universe isn't really moving so much as it is ballooning. This is happening because of some crazy science that I don't really have the qualifications to explain, but in essence, the expansion of the universe is fueled by something we call dark energy. Dark energy is something that we can't really observe, but we know has to exist. This expansion of the universe is actually accelerating as well. So why does this matter for the purposes of this video? Well, when it comes to visiting life on other planets, this means that it is becoming increasingly hard to visit them every day. If we were to make an assumption that there is a planet with intelligent life, say 15 billion light years away, and that we had a spacecraft that could reach 70% the speed of light, and we could somehow freeze ourselves and wake up in 15 billion years, we would never reach that planet, even if we left today. We are now at a point where anything that is more than 18 billion light years away is permanently unreachable even by light. This alone excludes a significant portion of galaxies that could potentially house intelligent life. In fact, that portion is actually more than 90%. Nearly 95% of all galaxies are completely unreachable. We will never interact with them, never see them as they are, and never contact them. Our only proof of their existence is the light they started emitting billions of years ago that is just now reaching us. Despite this, there are still many, many galaxies that are within range. Even beyond galaxies, there are a multitude of stars in our own cosmic backyard that have planets within the habitable zone. So yes, There are still many examples of star systems or galaxies within that 18 billion light year range that could still potentially house life. So why don't we just get to figuring out how to reach them? This question leads me to my next point. Number 2, interstellar travel is hard. You would be forgiven for thinking that reaching other stars is easy. Shows like Star Wars depict lightspeed travel to not only be possible, but easy. We know this is fiction, but we as humans also tend to overestimate our abilities in this department. I mean, we've been to the moon, so getting to other stars should be the next logical step, right? Unfortunately, it's not that simple. When we travel to other nearby planets and the moon, we are protected by the magnetic field of the solar system and the solar wind from the sun. This protective bubble is called the heliosphere. The heliosphere prevents us from experiencing the ionizing radiation that is part of interstellar space. When traveling to other stars, this radiation poses a significant challenge for any living thing. Radiation rips our cells apart and destroys our body's mechanisms to repair itself. Given this information, it is hard to see how we would ever achieve interstellar travel with a human being. We would literally have to line the inside walls of the spacecraft with concrete that is 2 feet thick. This alone would make launches nearly impossible, simply because of the weight. Besides just the launch, getting any spacecraft with this much mass to move anywhere near the speed of light would be incredibly difficult. Current technology allows for things like solar sails that could theoretically achieve about 10% the speed of light, but these have to be very light and also take long periods of time to accelerate to those speeds. Now, I am fully aware that technology will inevitably advance, and we will likely come up with solutions to these problems. Being able to travel through space without getting irradiated and at a reasonable speed certainly is not out of the question within the next few thousand years, sure. But this doesn't change the sheer distance between stars and galaxies. Like the previous example I gave, even if we were to reach 70% the speed of light, which may or may not be possible, reaching our nearest star, Proxima Centauri, would take more than 6 years for an observer and about 4 years for someone on the spacecraft. At this point, it is pertinent to note that because of Einstein's special relativity, when you are traveling at or close to the speed of light, time moves differently. This idea was popularized by the science fiction film Interstellar, but has been around since Einstein developed his theories of relativity. This is somewhat good news. If we can get close to the speed of light, the people on board essentially lengthen the span that they can search. However, we are pretty confident that our nearest cosmic star is uninhabited. This brings me to my third point. Number 3, confirmation of life. For it to be worth it for us to go to any nearby star system, we would realistically need confirmation that someone is actually there. There wouldn't really be much of a point in sending billions of dollars worth of equipment and people who would never see their families again to a star unless we were absolutely sure that there was someone there. This alone poses a massive challenge. We have been emitting radio waves into space for decades at this point. These are fairly weak and are just shot out in every direction, so any intelligent life is unlikely to pick them up. For our search to be meaningful and have any chance of actually bringing results, we have to be a little more selective about how we send these signals. For best results, we should pick systems that have planets in the habitable zone. I referenced this earlier, but I will take the time now to explain it a little more. The habitable zone is typically defined as a ring around a star where a planet is close enough to have liquid water, but far enough away that the sun's heat won't boil the water away. Our Milky Way galaxy likely has somewhere in the hundreds of millions to billions of planets in this habitable zone. Of course, just because a planet is in the habitable zone doesn't necessarily mean that life can exist there. There are many, many other factors that play into a planet's habitability, including whether it has a magnetic field, the atmosphere, or lack thereof, and average surface temperature. This is all to say that despite the fact that there are potentially billions of planets in this habitable zone, most of these still are unlikely to have the potential for life. Taking the time to find every single planet that has these characteristics is extremely time-consuming and energy intensive. If we could theoretically check one planet every minute of every day non-stop, it would take us somewhere around 3,000 years just to check 2 billion planets, which is probably a low estimate. The reality of our current situation is that we don't check planets at this frequency, and it's not even close. At the rate we are going, it would take us hundreds of thousands of years to properly check every one of these planets in the Milky Way. This may already sound bad, but trust me, it gets worse. This is just the time required to check a small number of potentially habitable planets. If we somehow got lucky and found one with all the right markers to indicate that there was life there, and it was only 500 light years away, we would have to send signals to this planet. Because radio signals are bound to the speed of light, it would take 500 years for that signal to reach the planet. If they somehow had sufficient technology to receive and understand these messages, it would take another 500 years for us to receive their response. And this is just one message. Actually getting there is a totally different matter entirely, which brings me to point number 4. Number 4, we wouldn't be able to get to the other planet alive. We currently have no technology that could allow us to get to another planet alive. Even if we got lucky enough to find a planet within 1,000 light years of Earth, and we could travel at our very optimistic estimate of 70% the speed of light, the crew on board would die long before we ever got there, even if we could solve the radiation problem. The next step to getting there would be to literally freeze these individuals in some kind of Han Solo style cryogenic freeze so they could make it the distance. This technology doesn't exist, and likely never will due to the delicate nature of the human body. The next best thing we have is induced hibernation capsules, which NASA has been experimenting with allegedly. But this doesn't stop aging, it would only slow it down a little. So the next hurdle would be to find a way to stop the aging process, which, again, currently doesn't exist and may never exist. One potential solution to this would be to send a robot, designed to mimic a human and carry messages for us, but again, that is likely far in the future. I think I have made my point that traveling by traditional methods and communicating with radio signals is not an efficient way to go about trying to find life. This brings up the question though, what about non-traditional methods such as warp drives? Warp drives are a theoretically possible method, but when you dig deeper, you realize they might not be as possible as one might imagine. As far as warp drives go, we might as well not even bother looking into the technology. If you aren't familiar with these, they are a highly theoretical device that when used could warp space and time around the craft rather than the craft actually moving through space. This could be used to travel to stars faster than light. The reason this is even considered possible is because the Einstein field equations couldn't be solved correctly with this idea in mind, but there are a few main issues that really bring this idea to its knees. Some of these issues are technical and could potentially be solved, but there is one that we genuinely cannot solve no matter how hard we try, which is that faster than light travel causes paradoxes. If you were to travel a distance faster than light, you would be able to theoretically turn around and see yourself leaving. As you can see, this alone would straight up break reality, and you would have basically just invented time travel. This option is pretty much off the table for that reason alone. There are still some other issues with this method, but they could potentially be resolved far in the future. But unless our fundamental understanding of space and time changes, faster than light travel is impossible. Up until this point, I have neglected to talk about likely one of the biggest hurdles we face in our day when it comes to making progress on any of this. The things I have discussed so far are definitely very challenging and will likely take many, many years to solve if they're even possible to overcome in the first place. However, the biggest limiting factor to all of this is humanity itself. We live in a world where groups of people can hardly find common ground on issues that affect our daily lives and well-being in mind. We are so divided as it is that I find it hard to imagine a world where we can all come together and unanimously decide that searching for life on other planets is even worth our time. I mean, heck, the US government took more than 40 days to just decide a budget for our country. Beyond the polarizing climate of our political spaces, we have other problems here on Earth that need to be solved before we should even think about going to other stars. At this point, I find it more likely that humanity erases itself than us going and finding other life out in the universe. We would have to have some sweeping social change, and everyone on Earth would need to all agree that the search for extraterrestrial life was the most important thing we can do for us to really make any meaningful progress. Only after that could we really start working on all of the problems that I have mentioned previously. So, yeah, we are barely making progress on step 1. For any one of us alive today and watching this video, the only way that it would be possible for us to go and find other life is if someone was to suddenly invent Rick and Morty levels of teleportation. Basically what I'm saying is that if I were you, I wouldn't hold your breath when it comes to discovering intelligent life elsewhere. But something that I rarely seen taken seriously is the idea that we might be visited ourselves. The idea of aliens visiting Earth has been theorized about more than any other conspiracy ever. Today, somewhere around 40 to 50% of Americans believe that we have been visited by aliens. At least for me, this statistic was pretty unsurprising. People romanticize alien visitation as much as they speculate about it. But I want to look at the possibility of alien visitation from a critical thinking perspective. For all intents and purposes, we have no good evidence that aliens have ever visited Earth. People experience inexplicable things all the time, and it seems that aliens are the go-to explanation. The problem with this is that our definition of aliens is so loose, and people give these so-called aliens absolutely godlike abilities. Somehow, these aliens can mess with us and mutilate our animals, but also go completely undetected. And not to mention the few times that we have detected them, they perform maneuvers that would be fatal to life as we know it because of the limits of human bodies. The problem with all these theories is that they are incredibly convenient. When aliens have the ability to do anything and go anywhere, it's hard to not attribute every unexplainable thing to them. Considering everything I have discussed when it comes to the difficulty of interstellar travel, I still find it highly unlikely that we have been visited or that we will be visited anytime soon. If we were to be visited, one would have to imagine that the creature visiting us would have to be fundamentally different from us as humans. Because of things like interstellar radiation, they would probably have to be completely different from us, not just in appearance, but biology as well. They would also have to have overcome all of the previously mentioned issues. Given the size and age of the universe, this is not at all impossible, just highly unlikely. Considering that life emerged on Earth within 4 billion years, it isn't unreasonable to assume that it could have developed elsewhere during the near 14 billion years since the Big Bang. We just don't know where that is, and if it is as advanced as we are. Maybe life is abundant, but intelligent life is very rare. I think I would like to explore this idea more in depth in a separate video. Suffice it to say, I don't believe that we have been visited previously by any extraterrestrial life. So what does all this information mean, and why is it important? Seeing all of this might feel a little depressing at first. Growing up, I think we all got the sense that we were somewhat close to reaching other stars because of science fiction shows. Unfortunately, with most things as an adult, reality hits hard. When I was met with this information, I too was a little unhappy. For the longest time, I held on to hope that I might one day meet an alien. But in reality, that probably won't happen for me or for any other person on this planet in the near future. But I think this realization can have a profound impact on our choices for today and the future. Seeing that we might truly be alone might make you feel very bleak, but I think this is a pessimistic view. A more constructive outlook that I have found is that if we have nowhere to go, and we are pretty sure no one is coming to save us, we better be sure to take care of what we have. I feel like for a while, I felt a sort of apathy for what we do here on Earth, because I always had the mindset of humans are going to be able to go to new planets here anyway, so why does what we do actually matter? This is faulty thinking. For all we know, humanity could be restricted to Earth for tens of thousands of years to come. So remember, what you do matters, and your actions have an impact. The consequences of your choices today could be felt by future generations for years to come.